Hello, this is Sandra from Cherry Heart. I thought I'd do a little extra video in between podcasts to talk a little bit about sock needles. I brought out my first socks pattern the other day to try and give a little helping hand to people that haven't knitted socks before that would like to try. It's not to sort of tell you everything you need to know, because otherwise it would be an encyclopedia, but yeah, hopefully it will give you a little extra help if you were wanting to try socks. So anyway, point being that I thought I'd do a little chat about the needles that I've got, because I've tried a few now, so I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the ones I've got, so it might help you choose, or it might help you if you were thinking of trying one of the ones I'm going to mention. So I've got just metal needles, because that's what I prefer to use, and let me show you the ones I'm going to talk about. Hope that wasn't noisy. Okay, so first of all, in no particular order, these are the ones I've tried. So I've got Hiya Hiya Sharps, I've got some Addi. These are the lace Addis. In America they call these the Sock Rockets. They're not called that over here for some reason, but if you get the Addi Turbos in lace, it's the same thing. So there's those. I've got some Knit Pro Zings, or what do you call them in America? Knitter's Pride. I don't think you can get the Zings in America, or at least you couldn't. I don't know if you can now. I've got some ChiaoGoo. Now these are the ones I've tried, which are the lace kind. I don't know if that's the best kind for socks, in all honesty. These are the only ones I've tried, but we'll come back to that. And I've got some Knit Pro, just standard Novas, and I've got some Knit Pro Karbonz. Okay, so I'll just talk a little about each one. For all the needles I'm doing a little review of, there's a post on my blog, which I'll link below, that's just got a sort of a little conclusion, if you like, a little summary of my thoughts on each one. So if you forget anything, or you wanted just a quick look, or I forget to mention anything about the needles while I'm talking about them, I've put sort of all the main points on there just as a quick little snippet, along with the ones I liked best. Okay, so let's get started. So first up, I'm going to talk about the Knit Pro Zings. So that's these colourful little babies, which are very nice. All the ones I'm reviewing I'm doing in 2.5, which I don't think it's going to focus. In 2.5 size, because that's the size I use for sock knitting, so that's the size I've got the most of. So let's talk about these. Good things about these. Nice and colourful. If you've seen the Zings, you'll see they come in all different colours. So if you knit with 2.25, which is 1.5 USA, I think. I hope that's correct. You'll have a different colour. These 2.5 ones are in red, the smaller ones are in yellow, so you get different colours, so that's quite pretty and exciting. The cable's just a bit dull and black, but it's okay. So where should we start? Should we start with the tips? The tips on these are very rounded. This is probably, I'm going to put it down as a negative point for these. They're extremely rounded, they're blunt. There's no bones about it, they're absolutely blunt. But they're fine if you're just knitting, you know, knit purl sock, quite plain, nothing too patterned or challenging, nothing sort of that's going to tighten the stitches like a sort of cable, or sort of knit more than say 2 together. These will be absolutely fine. So yeah, it depends on your preference, but I think a lot of people, sock knitters, probably wouldn't prefer the blunt tip. The colour I really like, as I've said. It's also got the size on the needle itself, which is always really useful, saves getting the little needle measure out, so I appreciate that a lot. The bit where the colour changes, the colour is actually just printed on, so I guess it's like an aluminium metal, but the colour is printed on, so there's absolutely no problem with joins whatsoever on either end. The only downside of that is that I've got a little place on my needles, I'm not sure you'll be able to see, just there, where the colour's worn off a bit. So I haven't used these massively, but maybe with these the colour will start to wear away on them. I don't know. I suspect what happened to mine is a dog got it. It's not massively damaged, but I suspect those little teeth had tried to have a little go and that just took the edge of the colour off. So that's just something I've noticed. The next thing is the cable. It is okay, I would say. It's not particularly thin and mega flexible, but it is perfectly adequate. It doesn't particularly retain shape. It does a little. I don't know if you can see it bouncing there. It does a little, but it's absolutely fine for sock knitting, I find. And the other thing is just the join. There is actually quite a bump there because you've got the whole thickness of the needle and then the cable, and they just merge together. So although the join is quite smooth, because of the change in thicknesses, the stitches do rub over that slightly. And certainly when on the cast on row where I've got the stitches a bit tighter, it was quite a push to get them over that, but it wasn't too bad. So yeah, overall not the very best, I would say, but a good needle, and we like the colours. Colourful is fun, so I quite like those. Okay, next up we have the Hiya Hiya Sharps. You've probably heard of these if you've watched anything about sock knitting, because they are quite a favourite with sock knitters, and they are with me too. I really like them. So they're just plain needles. They don't have the size put on them, and they don't have it on the cable either. But the thing I love about them, and tiny little things pleasing, tiny little mind here, but I just love this really cute blue cable. I just love the colour of it. This is the best cable, I think. It's the thinnest, it's the most flexible, it's completely bendy, it hardly retains any shape, and it's just the most flexible. It's the most easy to sort of bend around your stitches, and you know, when you're working magic loop, it sort of goes in there without pulling the stitches barely out of shape at all. So the tips are the reason these are so loved. They are sharp. They're called Hiya Hiya Sharps for a reason. I think you can get Hiya Hiya, I guess, normals. I haven't seen them here, but yeah, they are really sharp. You're never going to see, but I have done a picture. I have done a picture on the blog so you can really see and compare them. So if you want needles, sorry, that's my dog. What you doing? Out. Right, so if you want needles that are going to get into every single stitch, no matter how tight, that are going to get into cable stitches, or if you're doing sort of complicated patterns, these are the ones. These get in everything. They're brilliant. They're also absolutely brilliant if you ever drop a stitch, those tiny little stitches, if you ever drop one off the needle, this will get it. There's no doubt about it. The Zings won't. You'll be trying to push it through, and because they're so blunt, they'll do nothing for you, but these will pick it up. The only downside of that is I find it just occasionally, I've had it split the yarn, so I'll just have to make sure, you know, I haven't got a strand the other side, just occasionally. But if you're a pusher, if you push with your fingers, and I do, then these will start to hurt after a while. So, I mean, to the point that I have actually sort of made a sore patch and a little tiny cut on my finger because I was constantly pushing the end in. I think these, to be fair, because I've used them so much, I think that very, very sharpness has just come off the edge of them now because I've used them a lot. But yeah, be warned, if you're a finger pusher, these might not be your favourite, or you might want to try and curb that habit, because I can actually stop myself doing it if I try hard and think about it. So yeah, so there's that. And the other thing is the join is really good on these, really good. So because the needle actually tapers, it's got quite a nice long tapered section, it just merges into the cable almost seamlessly. There is a slight bump on the cable, but my stitches have never caught on it. Never had a problem with that at all. And the actual sort of shaft of it as well, the metal's so shiny, it's so polished that they're super quick. And yeah, so again, I'd consider that advantage, but maybe if you were newer and you sort of wanted a bit more grab on your stitches at first, maybe these wouldn't be your preferred choice, but I don't know if these are my favourites. It's between two. These are one of my favourites. Okay, next up we have the Knit Pro or Knitter's Pride Karbonz, which are these sleek black beauties. Now, I didn't expect to like these. In my mind, I had written these off as not worth trying. And I'll tell you why. Because where this black part meets the tip and the ends, I thought, well, surely that's just going to create a join. That's an extra thing for your stitches to rub along. Don't like the idea of that. Plus they were black, not my favourite colour, bit dull. So yeah, and they were expensive, that was the other thing. So I just thought, I've got needles that I like, I don't need to try these, and I don't think they'll be that great anyway. Then Heather of Pink Milk, she said, oh, I'm planning on stocking them, I'd be interested to see what you think, I'll send you some. So she sent me some, and I've tried them, and actually I really like them. Didn't expect that. So I still think the comment about the join is valid, because I've heard knitters on other podcasts say that has been a problem for them. So these ones are perfect. Other people have had them and they've been perfect. Maybe most of them are perfect. But before I got sent these, I looked at a pair at a yarn festival just to sort of check the tips, and they weren't good at all. So I personally wouldn't buy these online. I'd only buy it if I could be there to actually check that join. But that's just me. Maybe I was just unlucky in that I saw a pair there that weren't right, and then I happened to hear a couple of other people say it. Maybe it's just not a big problem, but for me, I would say that. But again, as I've said, these ones are perfect. You can just about feel the join if you rub your fingernail across it, but your fingers won't really pick it up, and the stitches don't at all, not one little bit. So I think these did originally come with the size written on, but I think that's just worn away. It's certainly not there now. So there's that. The tips are adequate, I would say. They're quite rounded, and they're not quite as blunt as the Zings, but they are fairly rounded. They're nowhere near as sharp as the Hiya Hiya Sharps, but they're fine. They do the job perfectly well. They're not the sharpest in the world, but they do pretty much all you need them to do. It's not a problem. So that's fine. Again, the cable, a bit like the Zings. It's not the most flexible, but it's perfectly fine. And again, with the join, it's pretty much the same as the Zings, slightly more tapered, I think. Just where the cable goes, and then there's only a very, very short, can't even see that, can you? Just that little area. Tiny little area between there is tapered, so it's not a huge problem for me, but the stitches will rub on them slightly, and if they're tight they will rub. And then this sort of, the reason they're expensive is because it's got this carbon fibre sort of needle to it, and it's just got It's got a really nice feel. It's not going to be super quick. It's not super slidey. It definitely gives some sort of grip to the stitches. So if you want to know they're not sort of going to get away from you when you're starting out, that is quite a good feel. It feels sort of silky. It's nice to touch and handle. So whether it's worth that expense, possibly not if you're a beginner, I wouldn't have said, but I think the idea is they're supposed to be stronger, so if you leave them somewhere, they're much less likely to snap, which is obviously something that can happen with the wooden ones. And I ended up quite liking the black. I feel quite professional when I knit with these. They're quite sleek and, yeah, svelte and black, and I ended up thinking, oh yes, I feel very professional using these in the end. And black's not sort of like a big favourite colour of mine, so there you go. So there you go. Didn't expect to like them, actually like them. I don't know. The pros and cons, I think the biggest cons with these are probably the price, really. And the fact you can have problems with joins. That's quite a big con, isn't it? But as for feel and the actual use of them, it's good. Okay, so next up we have another Knit Pro needle, the last Knit Pro needle, Knitter's Pride needle, and this is the Metal Novas. This is the cheapest one that I'm talking about. I put all the sort of a rough price guide on the blog. So these ones, oh look, one's actually bent, can you see that? Huh. It is possible for them to bend, apparently. Yeah, so these are sort of, I don't know, your middle of the road kind of needles. Tips are good, slightly sharper than the Karbonz, I would say. Again, not as sharp as the Hiya Hiyas, but I don't think anything is. But yeah, you can do everything you need to do with them pretty much, I would think. They're pretty good. Nice shiny needles, so stitches slip along them nice and quite nicely. There's no marking. Again, it might have been printed on them when I first got them, but if it was, it's certainly gone now. And the cable is this purple, but as you can see, I've had these a little while now, and it will change shape like crazy. But it's okay, it's still flexible enough, it does the job. It's fine. It's just, you know, it's not the best, but it's good. And then the join, again, I would say it gets slightly better than the Karbonz. You've got a slightly longer taper there, just slightly, but it just means they slide that slightly easier over. So again, maybe if I'd cast on really tight, I might need to push them on a bit, but other than that, yeah, I think these are sort of a good starting point. They are good at everything. It's not the best, but they are pretty good at everything. So, and for the price, I think they're quite hard to beat. They're just not very exciting, I think. I guess because they've been out there the longest, and I'm not a big fan of purple, so I don't particularly like the cable colour. But yeah, they are a pretty good needle, a good knitter's staple. Okay, next up we've got the ChiaoGoo Lace. Now, I'm going to try to be unbiased here, but I don't like these. I don't like them for sock knitting anyway. As I say, maybe, I'm hoping in fact, maybe these ones I've picked just aren't the best for sock knitting, and maybe if I tried some other ChiaoGoos I'd be fine, I'd really like them. But these ones themselves, for me, I don't think you can knit socks with them with Magic Loop, because this cable, I don't know if you can even see on here compared to how the others looked, but it is so thick. You can actually see, you probably won't be able to, you can actually see the sort of metal, the twisted metal wire, and it's got this I mean the red casing is lovely, I love the colour of it, but the red casing that goes over is slightly transparent, so you can actually see the twisted metal cable in there, and it looks like this massive thick bit of cable compared to the flexibility of the soft Hiya Hiya Sharp cables. It This feels like, you know, a bit of those cables they used to hold suspension bridges up. It feels thick and cumbersome. But again, that's because of using them for socks and using them for magic loop. It's really hard to sort of bend that down to get your stitches over. But also, as you're knitting, because it so much wants to just spring apart, it just distorts the stitches at the edge. They're just always pulling apart because this cable just wants to be flat. So yeah, so for me that makes them a no-no, but I'm sure they must have better options for sock knitting, or maybe it's just me and other people love them for sock knitting. I don't know, but that's just my take on them. I think just the inflexibility and thickness of the cable makes it too much hard work, personally. So let's move on. The tips are good. The tips are pretty sharp. These are the next sharpest to the Hiya Hiyas. Again, I haven't knit with them long enough to tell, but possibly you could get yourself a little sore finger if you're a needle pusher on those. But I'm sure they're gonna, I mean, I used them long enough to sort of try with stitches. I didn't have any problem picking anything up, but I didn't use them long enough to make a hole in my finger like I have done with Hiya Hiya Sharps before. We have got the size printed on the needle, which I always appreciate. You can hardly see it. It is very tiny, really tiny. I can just about read it, but it's minuscule, but it is there, and I like that they've put that on there. And also the join, well, the cable's so thick, in my opinion. The cable is quite thick, so the sort of transfer onto the needle, maybe that's why they did it that way. The transfer onto the needle is pretty good. They have tapered it slightly, and because the thickness isn't as different, you don't get so much problem with stitches pulling across. So that's good. And just the other thing is they are metal, and I'm sure on here they probably look the same as the Nova and the same as the Hiya Hiyas, but they've kind of got, I don't know, it's almost like a sort of coating over it. Maybe it's supposed to make them nice and slippery, but I just don't like it myself. It sort of gives them a bit of a, I don't know, you feel like, ooh, can I not wash that off? It feels like there's something on them that shouldn't be. It sort of discolours them slightly. Again, maybe I was just unlucky and got a strange pair, but for me, they're not great. But I would really like to try, I know people love ChiaoGoo, so I really would like to try another type, because I'm sure, you know, generally they do make great needles, and I'm sure these would be great for a different project, just for me, not for socks so much. Okay, and last and by no means least are my Addis, my Addi Lace. The lace ones are so that you get the sharper tip, which is great for sock knitting, picking up those little stitches. But although these are they've got quite a nice long point on them, the top is just slightly rounded off. So although they're sharp enough to pick up pretty much everything you would want, if you're a finger pusher, they're not going to damage you. So for me, that's perfect. If you really love your sharp ones, these might not quite do it for you, but I don't think you'd have a problem. I certainly didn't have a problem picking up any tight stitches or anything with them, so they're still good. What's I going to say? I'm just looking to see. Oh yeah, they've got the size printed on the cable, which isn't the easiest to see, to be honest with you, but it is. It's fine. So they've got it in the English and they've got the US size. That's good, isn't it? So it's a 2.5 UK, which is a 1 in US. I like that. I like they've got both on. It's got a funky red cable. It's pretty good. It's not quite as flexible as the Hiya Hiyas, but I think it's still a little bit thinner than the Knit Pro ones. So yeah, I really like that. I like that it's not just black, or I like that it's a colour. The join is really good. It's got a really long taper on it, so it's from there to there. So the stitches really gradually go from the thinner cable onto a slightly thicker bit, and then again onto the thicker, so you just don't get any problems with it transferring. And then last of all, the good thing about the Addis, in my opinion, is just the needles themselves. These ones feel like they've got a coating on, but in a good way to me. Maybe this is what the ChiaoGoo were trying to do as well. But the thing with the Addi Turbos is to make them quick, they put like this sort of coating on them and the stitches just glide. They are so fast. It's brilliant. That's why Addi Turbos were my favourite for the longest time. And I think these are probably my other favourites. They probably should be just my favourites, the Hiya Hiya Sharps, because I'm a needle pusher with their points, and these being almost as good but not actually dangerous. Probably should make these my favourite. But I just really like the blue cable of that Hiya Hiya, which is just a completely illogical reason, but there it is. But yeah, so if you're a beginner and you're worried about your stitches shooting off, these probably aren't the best. If you're not a beginner and you want to be super speedy, these are brilliant. But just, yeah, just the act of knitting with them, the way the stitches just glide without, you know, it's almost like they're floating along the needle. It's brilliant. So yeah, so these are my other favourites. Okay, well that's it. I've talked about all 6 of the needles. I hope it was some sort of help to you or some sort of guidance as to which ones you might like to try. And as I say, I've put a little bit of information on the blog just to sort of summarise the main points of what I said, so you can refer to it if you wanted to. So yeah, I hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye!